everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great topic up for discussion, but first, let's start with some introductions. We are Altitude Marketing, and Altitude Marketing is a B2B integrated marketing agency focused on the life sciences, established manufacturing, and software. My name is Ziera, and I am the marketing manager at Altitude, and I oversee all the internal efforts and initiatives that are aimed at increasing Altitude's brand awareness and lead gen efforts. And I'll toss it to Adam, but I want to talk about something exciting that's happening. This year, Altitude is turning 20. We are celebrating our 20th year anniversary. And in light of that, we will be hosting 20 webinars throughout the year, which is super exciting. I'll toss it to Adam.
Thanks, Ziera. I'm Adam Smartschan. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Altitude. I've been with the firm for quite a few of those 20 years at this point. And as Ziera mentioned, we have a great topic today. What we're looking at is generative AI and SEO. This really came to a head last year as ChatGPT got released out into the wide world. Over the last 12, 13 months, we've really been able to gain a lot of insight to how generative AI actually works and how you can bake it into your SEO workflows. So what we want to do today is take you through the top line of that, look at some real world examples of how generative AI can actually help. Critically, we want to look at what it can't do when it comes to SEO. And all of this, we want to keep to, give or take 20 minutes. It's 20 webinars, 20 years, 20 minutes. We also want to be sensitive to your time, right? Nobody wants to be sitting here for a whole hour. So with that, Ziera, should we get started?
Let's do it, Adam.
All right, fantastic.
And also, we have received some questions as well, too, when we were promoting the webinar. So we'll be addressing those as we go along.
Fantastic. So to get started here, let's just take a look at what we're talking about and what we're not talking about. As we look at the search engine results page, we're not today talking about this. This is a sponsored ad. This is a pay-per-click or a PPC ad. This really doesn't have anything to do with SEO per se. You can pay to be in this position. What we are talking about is this. These are organic results. These are effectively recommendations that Google is giving. This is what we're doing when we do SEO. We're trying to get in these spots and spots like them. When we talk about SEO, this is what we mean. So first up here, I want to cover one of the elephants in the room. Generative AI, ChatGPT specifically, is not a magic bullet when it comes to SEO. We were all a little bit afraid last year that this was going to come in and just replace writers, right? It was going to replace editors. It was going to replace content producers. And the reality is, it's really not going to do that. It's not going to do that anytime soon, at least at the scale we were afraid of. Certainly, there are some companies who are trying to get rid of writers or scale down their staffs. There's a lot of different feelings about that. Honestly, most of them are negative. But is generative AI going to come in on its own and just completely redo the way you do SEO? It's not going to do that. You are absolutely still necessary. The human is absolutely still necessary as we look at really anything to do with SEO. And a big reason for that is the context of Google right now. And that context is all about helpful content. This has been the name of now a couple of different updates to the algorithm over the last 12 months. It's also the core of what Google's looking for. And you can sum it up really in three topics. Number one is originality. Google is looking for original information, original reporting, original research, and original analysis. It's looking for substantive content, so complete and comprehensive views of a topic. And it's looking for insight, right? Something that goes a little bit beyond what you're able to get in other places. Think of Google, again, as a recommendation engine. When you type something into Google and hit return, you're basically asking it a question. And what Google is giving you back as the user is a recommendation on the best place to find information about that topic or that thing you're requesting information about. Google wants to give back helpful content, original content, substantive content, insightful content. And can a large language model produce original, substantive, and insightful content by itself? I would argue no. So this right here, well before we get to our give or take 20 minutes, I can tell you that generative AI by itself is not going to be able to do SEO because it can't, by its very nature, produce what Google wants.
And I think too, Adam, something there to highlight is that importance of human touch with AI and how we use not just AI, but AI paired with that human touch to
Mhm.
really enhance our work.
100%, right? Uh, and you can really see it here when we look at the different audiences that you have to serve when you're creating content for the web and doing SEO. You have to serve Google itself. You have to give it what it wants. It, at the end of the day, is the one, along with other search engines, of course, it's the one making the recommendation. It's the one deciding what goes on top, what goes second, what goes on page 75. You have to serve on the left hand side here the user, right? They want an answer to a question. They're looking for information, and Google's trying to serve them the best way it knows how, which right now is helpful content. And of course, we have to be mindful of the SEO professional themselves, the content producer themselves. Uh, they have to, be realistic about what they can do and the amount of time they have available. There's so many hours in a week. There's only so many hours in a day. What can you actually get done to provide that helpful content? And when we look at it this way, we can start to get a better view of how generative AI can come to the party. It's not going to be able to do helpful content by itself. So it's not necessarily going to serve what Google wants. Google thinks helpful content is what users want. It has a lot of data to show that it's serving up the right stuff. So therefore, generative AI by itself can't necessarily serve the user. But it can assist that SEO professional. It can make them work a little bit faster, a little bit smarter. It can give some ideas and insights. It can offer some process improvements that we'll cover here in just a little bit that can help that human serve Google and help that human serve the user. And these, of course, by the way, are generative AI images. I couldn't help myself. So going back to that, can this support the originality, the substance, the insight, those helpful content things that Google's looking for? It totally can. It just can't do it by itself. It's always here to help, right? Critically, this image is not a robot doing SEO. This image is not a robot producing content. This image is intentionally a robot helping a person produce content because that's ultimately what these tools can do.
Yep, that's great insight, Adam. Let's take a brief pause and answer one of our questions here. So, this question is, what makes the new versions of ChatGPT different than the older versions like GPT? Can you go into a little bit about that, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you ask about that, really what we're talking about is GPT-4 versus GPT 3.5, GPT-3, and back to 2, which has been commercially available for really about 5 years now. 3 is what we were thinking about last year when we thought about ChatGPT. 3.5, obviously an incremental step. And now 4 is commercially available on the pro plan of ChatGPT. It's also baked into a lot of applications. The nice thing about 4, number one, is that it is available or uh, it is capable, I should say, of going out to the broader web. So it can look and see what's on a website. For instance, it can access information and synthesize information on its own. Previous versions were landlocked to their own set of training data. Now, this was massive, massive amounts of training data, but it was still, a finite amount. Theoretically, 4 can go out and get information from the broader web. That makes it super powerful. That's why when you see it baked into things, they tend to be a little bit more capable, a little bit more conversational than the things that are based on 3 or 3.5. The other thing with 4 is that it's flexible enough that you can use it to build custom GPTs. So basically, these tiny little pre-trained models to do one specific thing or one specific set of things. You can load up your own information, combine that with what's available on the open web, run it all through the natural language capabilities of the large language model, and have what amounts to a chatbot or a chat-based application that's able to solve a specific problem. Altitude, for instance, we have our own custom GPT available on the OpenAI GPT market, which offers B2B marketing advice. And that's taken a lot of the information that we fed in our perspective, our experience, and our expertise. Then it layers on the natural language. It layers on what it's able to find on the web, and frankly, gives some pretty good answers to some pretty complex questions.
Nice. Awesome.
Absolutely. So, as we get back to this, a couple of questions that we want to answer here. Number one, how should we be thinking about generative AI when it comes to SEO? Number two, what are you able to get from it? What they're going to give you? And then number three, how do you interact with it? In terms of thinking about generative AI, this is kind of the old way of looking at it. Folks assumed a year ago that ChatGPT was omniscient, and they said it has so much training information, so much training data that it has to be able to find the perfect answer or the right answer. The reality is very different. The reality is that ChatGPT or any generative AI model is giving you what amounts to color gray. It is taking all of that information, but it can't necessarily weight that information the way a human brain can. What it's doing is it's synthesizing it and it's able to give you what amounts to the average or the mean. And this matters for SEO because when you're producing content for SEO, you're probably a subject matter expert. And as a subject matter expert, you're going to bring a certain perspective. You're also going to bring bias and you're going to have a certain way of talking about things. It's going to have your own style, your own intonation, but certainly jargon and acronyms and things like that. And all of that starts to become nuanced and idiosyncratic. And the more nuanced and idiosyncratic it is, the less likely it is to jive with what Google expects. Google wants to serve as many users as it possibly can. So if you think about this as a math equation, bringing ideas and bringing some top line content and outlines from ChatGPT to your nuanced expert information can start to bring your level closer to what the average person wants, to what Google understands, what Google is willing to rank because it gets what you're going for without really dumbing down what you're doing. So I really like it from that perspective. It's not always going to be right, but it is going to tell you basically what the average response is going to be. That's actually pretty powerful.
Right. And I think that's super important too, because you want to be able to display, which I know you're going to go into later. It's kind of like that sanity check,
Yeah.
but also you want to add your own voice because
Yeah.
you want to make sure you're producing that original content. And that's really what Google's looking for.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can go super, super deep into a topic, but if Google doesn't understand what you're saying, it's not going to be able to rank you for anything. Your content can be awesome, but if nobody finds it, does it really matter?
Right.
Another way to look at it is as a vaguely dependency in a robot intern, right? You're not going to give an intern a mission critical task in most cases. They're going to be there to solve specific problems. They're going to be there to get specific answers for you to take a little bit of the load off. Think of generative AI like this intern. It's here to give you a hand, to bounce some ideas off of. It's not going to do all of your work for you. If we could hire an intern to do all of our work for us, life would be a whole lot easier. But they can help and they can give some incremental value along the way. And I think that's a really good way of looking.
Yeah. And kind of on that similar topic of, seeing AI as an intern, we have a question here relating to the fact that people are letting their team and their employees
Yeah,
use AI and Chat GPT. And what are some ethical concerns behind that? Or some things that maybe people or management need to watch out for?
totally. Uh, that's a great question. I remember when that came in that email. The first place I went to was transparency. Uh, I do believe that when you're generating content with AI, you do need to be upfront about it. Specifically, if you're letting a human interact with it, they have to know what they're interacting with because AI has come a long way. It's very good. It's super powerful. It can make mistakes. It can hallucinate. So you always have to be clear to the user what they're getting. Right. I mean, ChatGPT itself does this. There's a disclaimer right on there that ChatGPT can make mistakes. Number two is the question of plagiarism and originality. This is a little bit higher level of a discussion here.
A cult one for sure.
Yeah, right. Is it plagiarism? My honest opinion is no, it's not, because I look at plagiarism as straight up copying, and a large language model is not copying. It is certainly derivative, right? Is it derivative in a fair way? I, I don't always know, right? So you kind of have to make this decision on a case by case basis, on a brand by brand basis. And then the last thing really comes up to the webmaster side. Do you want your content available to be training data for large language models? In most cases, I think, yes, you should. The reason is that LLMs and generative AI are powering a lot of search. I know that I want my content, my perspective, and my answers to be part of the pool that Google or Bing or whoever else is pulling from. That said, it's not my business to be selling information and selling data. If I was doing that, I'd probably want to pull it back and keep it back myself. uh, because if an LLM can pull from it and give that answer for free, what I'm selling isn't necessarily all that valuable.
True. Yeah, that makes complete sense, and I think that's an area where you kind of have to gauge.
Yep,
It's very difficult, but those were great insights and great foundational steps.
totally right. I mean, it feels like this has been around forever, but we've really only been having this conversation in earnest for maybe 14 months now.
Nope,
So, there's still a lot to learn and a lot of, frankly, case law to be established.
absolutely.
So, back here, looking at the robot intern and what an LLM can do, it's not going to write your. It can write content. It probably shouldn't be writing your content because you can do better. Uh, you are going to do more. You're going to do it faster if you let generative AI help you. We'll talk about how it can do that. You don't want to hand over the reins, like you don't want to hand over the reins to our Dickensian robot intern, because it's not necessarily going to do as good a job as you can.
It's a tool, not a solution. That's
That's
how I like to look at it.
great. It's a great way of looking at it. And fortunately, it's a tool that we're allowed to use, and Google has said so. Previously, Google guidance had said helpful content needs to be written by people for people. It no longer says that. Right now, we're looking at stuff created for people. Does that mean again we should hand over the reins 100%? Let it kick out whatever it can kick out? No, I don't think it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be original or insightful or substantive in the way Google's looking for. But we are allowed to use, to your point there, Ziera, the tool to help us create what we need to create. And a couple of things it can do, right, to help us, ideation. This is first and foremost, this is honestly where I use it the most. Super deep expertise is going to be present most of the time that you're writing SEO content, but an LLM like ChatGPT can go super broad. It's going to give you a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, a lot of things you can potentially cover. You don't have to take all of its suggestions, but if you ask it for an outline, you ask it for some possibilities and things you might want to go into, it's going to be able to bring that average, that mean of humanity view, and maybe give me some ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, or some things that, the average person doesn't necessarily know that I do because I've been doing this job for, again, the better part of those 20 years. It can rewrite and refresh really effectively. It can make your content better, depends on your definition of better. Can it help you potentially tone it down? It's a little too formal. Can it potentially help look for grammatical errors, missing periods, misused commas? It's very good at that. Uh, Even if you're not the best copy editor yourself, having something like ChatGPT in your back pocket, if you know how to use it, uh, it's not going to miss things. And that's really powerful. Jumping off points are great. I mentioned before, outlines, ideas to discuss, discussion points. Just running your idea, your topic past something like ChatGPT, the way you would run it past, a relatively new colleague or an intern is great. It can help you think through things. You're conversing with it through type, kind of like you're conversing with a human being. So just bouncing ideas off it and getting some thoughts and maybe getting a paragraph here or a sentence there or a rewrite there. It can be great, right? Blank page is the hardest thing we do with content and SEO. We can help you get past that. And you had mentioned this before, that sanity check, right? Your bias comes out in different ways. And a lot of the ways it comes out when it comes to SEO is stuff that Google isn't going to understand or that is contradictory to what the average opinion is. And Google might not be willing to rank that because it just doesn't quite know where you fit. Being able to bring that counter argument into your work being able to bring that normal perspective into your work that an LLM is going to give you just by date of how much information it has to work with, that can be really, really valuable. All this, really what we're talking about is optimization. Right? Again, this isn't a revolution in terms of this thing is producing 50 pieces of content a day for me. But is it taking you from one to two? Is it taking you from two to three? Is it reducing your time from, 2 hours to half an hour to an hour and a half? That's what we're looking at here. It's these incremental gains that you get from having this tool or having this, intern level colleague. That's really where the value is. Again, am I going to hand it the reins and let it write everything? I'm just not going to do that, right? I can't control it well enough. I don't trust it enough. And I don't know that I'm going to trust it enough, really in my working lifetime here. Am I going to use it? Yeah, literally every day because it can help make my work better. It can help me, always have someone to bounce something off that's always going to give me a good, honest opinion. I mentioned before interacting with ChatGPT or with generative AI tools. This is where prompt engineering comes to play. And this is a thing that in the last 12, 13 months um, has really gotten complex. And you see ideas like this, right? How do you get the perfect blog post out of ChatGPT? Well, all you have to do is this, 150 odd word prompt. Personally, I think things like this are magical thinking. Because if you dive deep into a prompt like this, it's literally asking for insightful content, original content. A couple of times in here, it asks specifically for human content. So I'm asking a robot now for human content. It doesn't work that way, right? You don't have this magic key because you use the word human in here that also, oh, that's right. I probably should write like a human. Maybe I will make it high quality because you asked me to make it high quality. The reality is, I think this is well past the point of diminishing returns. And I think that when you've spent this much time working on your prompt, your assumption about the end product is off base because the end product of this prompt and the end product of a prompt that's way shorter and way more conversational, it's probably going to be similar. This is going to kick you out something that you assume is great because I spent so much time on my prompt. The reality is that it's going to give you basically the exact same thing with all of the problems that come with ChatGPT, right? All the hallucinations are still going to be there. I can ask it not to hallucinate. It doesn't know what that means in any real way. I can ask it to be human written. It's not human written, right? I can ask it to be original and insightful. And the reality is it's from the exact same sources if I didn't ask it to be original and insightful. Right. What I can do though is I can be clear and specific, right? If I'm looking for an outline, if I'm looking for some ideas, if I'm looking for it to expand on what I'm thinking, if I'm looking for it to find fault with what I'm thinking, just going to ask it that like I'm talking with a human. And I'm going to write like I'm talking to a human. The great thing about an LLM is its natural language capabilities. Uh, this is where the real value, honestly, is being brought to the party. So write like you're talking to a human and it's going to respond in a relatively similar tone. That's just going to help with your natural workflow because the human is, again, the center of all of this.
And I think that's so important because often we forget that, like our initial thought is, we're talking to a robot
Yeah.
or so we need to be a specific way.
Mhm.
But this learning mechanics and, that's behind the AI
Mhm.
want us to just be clear and specific and
Yeah.
right human.
Yeah. The entire point of the whole AI revolution is the ability to take natural language and natural actions and turn them into computer actions. This is where, on the image side, you see what Photoshop has done, really getting rid of a lot of the need to actually know where the tool is. You can use search function and describe what you're looking for, even generate images just by typing what you want and hitting return. There aren't magic words, right? There isn't, this thing that if you put it in this specific way, it's going to give you better output,
Right.
all coming from the same place. It's very good at understanding what human language means. So just use it, right? You're going to be more clear.
Yep. So don't overdo it, everybody.
Yeah,
Just be simple and clear, and you're more likely to get the output that you're looking for.
totally. And critically, right, you don't want to inject bias. What you'll find, especially with ChatGPT, is if I put in a long string of, say, technical language that it doesn't understand, whatever it gives back to me is probably going to have basically that exact same string of technical language in it. So it doesn't really know what I'm asking for. So it's just saying, yeah, he probably wants that. So I'm going to give him that. Now, the issue that happens is if I give it a long string of my own technical language and it gives me back a very similar string of technical language, my assumption is it's correct. Why do I think that? Because it felt like I was talking to a human and it gave me back something that I think is correct because I said it. So keeping your own bias out, making sure you're not assuming this is correct. You're assuming that this is a relatively trustworthy, competent intern voice. It's not a subject matter expert. It is going to help you as you look at ideation, as you look at sanity checks, as you look at this thing to bounce ideas off. So to wrap up here, number one, what are we looking at when we look at generative AI? What should we expect? It's a really fast, really confident intern, right? It's not always going to give you more stuff. And frankly, more stuff isn't always better. It can help you make your stuff better. That's really what you want. But number two is you have to remember your stakeholders, right? You could produce a lot of stuff with ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. Is that going to be good for the user? Probably not. Is it going to be good for Google? Well, Google's asking for originality, insightfulness, and comprehensiveness. Probably not going to give you those. And you have to avoid as well falling for the trap of picking two of the three stakeholders. I can do great stuff for Google that's great for a user, might take me forever. I can do stuff that's really good for me because it's super fast and it's great for the user, but it might not be so friendly to Google because I've used, really arcane language or really idiosyncratic language. So the ability to please all the stakeholders and do it, fast enough that it's sustainable, it's really a great place for generative AI. And then critically, the underpinning here for all of this is the fact that you still matter, right? We can't extract human from this anytime soon, nor should we try to extract human from this anytime soon. The people reading, the people you want to convert, the reason you do SEO in the first place, they're all human, right? Specifically in nuanced and technical subjects. So the more you're bringing yourself to the party, generative AI is a way to multiply your efforts, the better.
Those were some great, great insights on AI and really how we're supposed to be using AI to enhance our work and always to remember that AI needs that human touch. So, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you got something valuable out of today's conversation. And once again, I'm Ziera, that's Adam, and we are Altitude Marketing. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us on additional channels to stay up to date on all things marketing and additional webinars. Take care, everyone.